Maggie took a deep breath, her heart racing, but her demeanor calm. I appreciate your concern, but I assure you I'm not just dreaming. I can pay for this car in full today. Blake raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on his face. If you're serious, I'd need to see some proof of funds. You understand how it is. His tone was condescending, as if he were talking to a child. Of course, Maggie replied, her voice steady. I have the means. I can show you my bank statement if necessary. She could feel the eyes of the onlookers on her, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama. At that moment, the couple she had overheard earlier, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, turned to Blake with a hint of uncertainty. Are you sure she's not just wasting your time? Mrs. Harrington asked, glancing between Blake and Maggie. Maggie smiled at them, her confidence unwavering. I understand where you're coming from, but I promise you this is not a joke. It's a gift for my sister who has fought hard and deserves something special. Blake's expression shifted slightly. He had seen many people come through the dealership, but few had the poise that Maggie exuded. Let me check with my manager, he said reluctantly, trying to regain control of the situation. As he walked away, Maggie turned to Daniel, who looked both relieved and nervous. Thank you for being kind, she said. I can tell you're new here. Daniel nodded, grateful for her understanding. I really am. I just wish I could help more. You're doing fine, Maggie reassured him. Just be yourself. That's the best way to connect with people. After a few minutes that felt like an eternity, Blake returned, his demeanor slightly softened. All right, let's take a look at the Azure together. He gestured for Maggie to follow him, a hint of reluctance in his step. As they approached the car, Maggie felt a surge of excitement. She had always admired the Azure's sleek lines and luxurious interior. This is a stunning vehicle, she remarked, running her hand over the smooth finish. Blake watched her closely, trying to gauge her reaction. It's one of our finest models. The craftsmanship is unparalleled. He opened the door, inviting her inside. As she settled into the plush leather seats, a wave of satisfaction washed over her. This was more than just a car. It was a symbol of her sister's triumph. Would you like to take it for a test drive? Blake asked, his tone shifting to one of genuine interest. Yes, I would love that, Maggie replied, her smile brightening the room. As they drove through the city, Maggie felt the power of the car beneath her, its engine purring like a contented cat. Blake, sitting beside her, began to see her in a new light. She wasn't just a woman in a simple outfit. She was someone with purpose and passion, someone who had earned her place in the world. When they returned to the dealership, Blake was ready to discuss the details. I'm impressed, Maggie. You certainly know what you want. Thank you, she said, her eyes sparkling. I've worked hard to make a difference in the lives of others, and this is my way of celebrating my sister's journey. As they finalized the paperwork, Maggie noticed the shift in the atmosphere around the dealership. Staff members who had once smirked now watched with respect. The couple she had encountered earlier gave her an approving nod, and even Daniel seemed to stand a little taller. When the transaction was complete, Maggie walked out of the dealership, the keys to the Azure in her hand. She felt a sense of triumph, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been underestimated. As she drove away, she glanced back at the dealership, a smile on her face. She had turned a moment of disdain into one of empowerment, and that was a victory worth celebrating. I'm ready to make a cash purchase today, Maggie stated, her voice steady, a calm contrast to the storm brewing inside her. She kept her composure intact, drawing on years of resilience built from her work with the Collins Foundation for Children with Disabilities. At that moment, Blake's professional facade completely shattered. He let out a short, harsh laugh that echoed throughout the showroom, drawing the attention of several onlookers. A cash purchase? Really? His voice rose, aimed at humiliating her. This isn't a yard sale. We're talking about $250,000. People who can afford these cars don't dress like... He waved dismissively at her outfit, a simple white t-shirt and well-worn jeans. Maggie's cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from a growing anger, not for herself, but for anyone who had ever faced judgment based on their appearance. She had dedicated her life to advocating for those who were often overlooked, and now she felt a fire igniting within her. "I believe my money is as good as anyone else's," she replied, her voice calm but firm, each word carefully chosen to reflect her unwavering conviction. Blake stepped closer, towering over her, his arrogance palpable. "Let me be clear," he said, no longer concealing his disdain. "You are wasting my time and embarrassing yourself. Either make an appointment to discuss this seriously, dressed appropriately, or please leave." The showroom fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The Harringtons, who had been admiring the azure moments earlier, stepped away from the car, visibly uncomfortable. Just then, a new voice joined the conversation. It was Richard Mason, the dealership's owner, drawn in by the commotion. Blake straightened his tie, attempting to regain his composure. "No problem, sir. Just explaining to this lady that we operate by appointment for serious buyers." Richard quickly assessed the situation, taking in Maggie's simple appearance and the crowd watching with growing curiosity. His expression indicated which side he was siding with. "I see," he said, his tone neutral but observant. "Ms. Collins," Maggie introduced herself, her voice steady, refusing to let the situation diminish her identity. "Margaret Collins." "Ms. Collins, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," Richard said, his tone shifting slightly as he recognized her name. "Our clientele typically, well, they understand the exclusivity of our vehicles." "I understand perfectly," Maggie replied, her voice steady despite the humiliation rising within her. "Your sales manager has made your policies quite clear." She felt the weight of the onlookers' gazes, a mixture of sympathy and judgment, but she stood tall, embodying the strength she had cultivated over the years. Blake stepped forward again, his tone dripping with condescension. "If you're genuinely interested, which I doubt, you can call for an appointment, but I'd suggest bringing proof of funds and dressing appropriately. These cars," he gestured around the showroom, "are for a certain class of people." A murmur spread among the onlookers, and someone even snickered, but Maggie refused to let their laughter pierce her resolve. Maggie glanced around at the judging faces, at Blake's smug expression, and at Richard's tacit approval of his behavior. She had faced discrimination before, but rarely so openly and publicly. The sting of judgment was familiar, yet it never dulled. "I see," she said simply, her voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of defiance. With her dignity intact but her spirit bruised, she turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Blake's voice. "Not quite enough. Some people just don't know their place." As she pushed through the glass doors into the morning sunlight, Maggie pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly but with purpose. The sting of humiliation lingered, but a small, determined smile crept onto her lips as she dialed. The Collins estate sprawled over 5 serene acres outside Boston, its understated elegance concealing the billions behind its ownership. Alexander Collins preferred it that way, shunning the spotlight in favor of philanthropy and innovation. At 41, the tech visionary had transformed renewable energy storage technology, amassing a fortune while intentionally maintaining a low profile. When Maggie entered his home office, Alexander looked up from his desk, his brow furrowing with concern. He set aside his work immediately, his attention fully on her. 15 years of marriage had honed his ability to read her expressions with precision. Something was clearly wrong. "Maggie," he said softly, rising to meet her. "What happened?" His voice was filled with genuine concern, his warm brown eyes searching hers for answers. Maggie took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the morning's events wash over her. "I went to the dealership to buy a car for Caroline's birthday," she began, her voice steadying as she recounted the encounter. "I thought it would be a special surprise for her, something to celebrate her victory over breast cancer. But when I arrived, the sales manager, Blake, treated me like I didn't belong there. He laughed at my appearance and dismissed my intentions, as if my worth was tied to my outfit." Alexander's expression darkened, a flicker of anger crossing his face. He had seen Maggie face challenges before, but this blatant disrespect ignited a protective instinct within him. "That's unacceptable," he replied, his voice firm and resolute. "You deserve to be treated with respect, no matter where you are or what you wear." Maggie nodded, appreciating his support, but she also felt a swell of determination rising within her. "I didn't let him get to me, Alex. I know my worth, and I know what I want. This car is more than just a gift. It's a symbol of my sister's journey and the struggles she's overcome. I won't let anyone diminish that." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes softening as he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make sure you get that car. I'll go with you. We'll show them that you're not just a name on a list, but a force to be reckoned with." Maggie's heart swelled at his words. She felt invigorated, ready to confront the prejudice head-on. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I appreciate your belief in me, but I want to do this on my own. This is my fight, and I want to win it for Caroline." He smiled, admiration shining in his eyes. "I respect that. Just know I'm here to support you in any way you need." With renewed determination, Maggie took a deep breath and straightened her posture. "I'm going back to that dealership," she declared, her resolve unshakable. "I'm going to show them that I am who I say I am, and I won't let anyone's judgment define me." As she turned to leave, Alexander placed a gentle hand on her arm, stopping her for just a moment. "Remember, Maggie, it's not just about the car. It's about standing up for yourself and what you believe in. You're setting an example for others who may feel overlooked." With a nod, Maggie stepped out into the sunlight, feeling the warmth on her skin and the cool breeze in her hair. She was ready to face whatever came next, fueled by the love for her sister and the unwavering belief in her own strength. This time, she wouldn't just be a buyer, she would be a beacon of empowerment, ready to reclaim her narrative and show the world that true worth comes from within. As she drove back to the dealership, her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and determination. The sleek lines of the Azure flashed through her mind, a reminder of her goal. She could already envision her sister's face lighting up with joy, the way it always did when she was surprised. Arriving at the dealership, Maggie took a moment to gather herself. She straightened her back, adjusted her ponytail, and stepped out of the car, the sun glinting off the polished surface of the Azure. This time, she would walk in with her head held high, unyielding in the face of judgment. As she entered the showroom, Blake was busy chatting with another customer, his back turned. The atmosphere was different this time. Whispers danced through the air as people recognized her. She approached the sleek Azure, her fingers brushing against its surface, feeling a connection to the dreams it represented. "Good morning, Ms. Collins," Daniel called out, his face lighting up with surprise and relief. "I'm glad to see you back." Maggie turned to him, her expression warm. "Thank you, Daniel. I'm here to discuss the Azure." Blake turned at the sound of her voice, his smile faltering as he recognized her. "Oh, you're back," he said, his tone laced with a hint of disbelief. "I thought you'd reconsider." "No, Blake," she replied firmly, her voice steady. "I'm here to make that purchase. I have the funds, and I'm ready to proceed." His expression shifted, a mix of surprise and irritation. "I see," he said slowly, trying to regain his composure. "Well, let's see if we can arrange that. But as I mentioned earlier, this vehicle is for serious buyers only." Maggie stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "I'm a serious buyer, Blake. I've built a foundation that has transformed countless lives, and I've worked hard to earn my place in this world. I won't be dismissed because of my appearance." The tension in the showroom thickened as onlookers absorbed her words. Blake's facade wavered, and for a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. "Let's get the paperwork started," Richard interjected, stepping forward with a newfound respect for Maggie. "If Ms. Collins is ready to proceed, then we should accommodate her." Blake's jaw tightened, but he nodded reluctantly. "Of course, sir." As they moved to finalize the details, Maggie felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had faced the storm and emerged stronger, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated. This was not just about a luxury car, it was about standing tall in the face of adversity and claiming her rightful place in a world that often tried to silence her. With the paperwork signed and the keys to the Azure in her hand, Maggie stepped out of the dealership, the sun shining brightly above her. She felt a sense of triumph, not just for herself, but for all those who had ever felt overlooked. As she drove away, she glanced back at the dealership, a smile on her face, knowing she had turned a moment of disdain into one of empowerment. She was ready to celebrate her sister's journey, and in doing so, she had reclaimed her own narrative. "What happened?" he asked, moving around the desk to join her. Maggie sank into a leather chair, the rich leather cool against her skin, but the warmth of the moment was overshadowed by the events of the morning flooding back to her. "It was quite educational," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As she recounted her experience at the dealership, the condescension, the humiliation, and the blatant discrimination, she could feel the weight of each word. Alexander's expression grew serious, his brow furrowing with concern, but he remained quiet, allowing her the space to process her feelings. "It's not about me," she concluded, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I have the privilege of walking away knowing the truth, but how many people are treated that way every day without the comfort of knowing they could actually afford what they're being denied?" She looked out the window, watching the leaves dance in the gentle breeze, reflecting on the countless individuals who faced similar judgments without the same resilience or support she had. Alexander nodded thoughtfully, his heart swelling with admiration for her unwavering concern for others, even when she had been wronged. Over the years, he had come to appreciate this about Maggie, her ability to empathize with those who suffered injustice, even in her own moments of pain. "So what do you want to do about it?" he finally asked, his voice laced with curiosity and concern. "Part of me wants to do nothing," she admitted, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Just donate Caroline's gift elsewhere. But then I think about that young salesman, Daniel, who treated me with respect no matter how I was dressed. And I consider all the people who face that kind of judgment without any way to respond." She looked directly at Alexander, her eyes sparkling with determination. "These individuals need to understand that worth isn't defined by appearance, but I don't want vengeance. I want awareness." Alexander nodded slowly, a plan beginning to take shape in his mind. "I think I might have an idea that achieves both." "Nothing too dramatic," Maggie warned, a teasing glint in her eye, aware of her husband's protective nature. "No buying the dealership and firing everyone." Alexander chuckled, a warm sound that filled the room. "Nothing so cliché, but perhaps—" He leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "A little education is in order." Together, they devised a plan, not for revenge, but for enlightenment, something that could shift perspectives more effectively than mere retribution. "Are you sure you don't want to come along?" Alexander asked as they finalized the details, his tone serious yet playful. Maggie shook her head, her expression resolute. "This isn't about me needing to witness their comeuppance. It's about them learning to look beyond appearances." She paused, a smile breaking through her earlier tension. "But I expect a full report." As evening settled over their home, casting a golden hue through the windows, Alexander made several phone calls, setting things in motion for the next morning. Tomorrow would bring a powerful lesson in humility and the perils of assumptions, not just for Blake Thompson, but for everyone at Boston Luxury Motors. The following morning dawned with perfect weather, the sun shining brightly in a clear blue sky. Blake Thompson walked into Boston Luxury Motors with a confident stride, adjusting his signature blue tie, the color a perfect match for his meticulously polished shoes. The previous day's incident with the underdressed woman had turned into an amusing story he shared over drinks with colleagues, just another delusional dreamer who thought she belonged in the world of luxury. He smirked at the thought, feeling a sense of superiority wash over him. The showroom sparkled under strategically placed lights, illuminating the exotic cars arranged to maximize their appeal. Blake had just wrapped up the morning staff meeting, his voice booming with authority as he stressed the importance of properly qualifying customers. "Remember," he instructed the sales team, his tone condescending, "our time is valuable. We cater to a specific clientele. It's not elitism, it's efficiency." His colleagues nodded in agreement, their expressions mirroring his confidence, reinforcing the toxic culture that had taken root in the dealership. But unbeknownst to Blake and his team, the day was about to take an unexpected turn. As they went about their routines, a sleek black SUV pulled into the parking lot, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. A hush fell over the showroom as the vehicle's door swung open and out stepped a figure clad in a tailored suit, exuding an air of authority and purpose. Maggie had decided to stay behind the scenes, allowing Alexander to orchestrate the day's events. She watched from the comfort of their home, her heart racing with anticipation. She knew Alexander had a plan that would not only challenge Blake's perceptions, but also open the eyes of the entire sales team to the realities of their biases. As the figure approached the entrance of Boston Luxury Motors, Maggie felt a surge of hope and excitement. She trusted Alexander to handle the situation with the grace and poise that he always exhibited. Today was about more than just confronting Blake. It was about fostering understanding and change within a culture that had long perpetuated discrimination. Inside the dealership, Blake was oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. He continued to regale his team with tales of high-profile clients and the importance of maintaining their exclusive brand. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of entitlement, and Blake relished being the center of attention, basking in the glow of his own self-importance. As the door swung open, the mood in the showroom shifted dramatically. A tall figure with a confident stride entered, instantly capturing everyone's attention. The employees paused, conversations fading as they turned to see who had arrived. "Good morning," the figure said with a commanding voice. "I'm here to speak with Blake Thompson." The words hung in the air, charged with energy. Blake, surprised by the interruption, straightened his tie and approached with a lingering smirk. "And you are?" he asked condescendingly, clearly unprepared for what was to come. "I represent a client who deserves better treatment than what they received yesterday," the figure replied, unwavering. "It's time for you to understand the impact of your assumptions and biases." Blake's amusement turned to confusion. "And why should I care? We cater to a specific clientele," he retorted, trying to regain control. The visitor stepped closer, calm yet assertive. "Every person who walks through that door has a story and worth that transcends their appearance. It's not just about sales, it's about respect and dignity." Tension escalated in the room as employees exchanged glances, some beginning to grasp the implications. Meanwhile, Maggie watched from home, her heart racing with a mix of anxiety and excitement, trusting Alexander to convey their message effectively. As the conversation continued, Alexander challenged Blake's perceptions with real-life examples and statistics about discrimination in sales. He passionately emphasized the importance of inclusivity, urging the team to see the potential in every customer, regardless of appearance. "Imagine treating every person who walks through that door as worthy of your time and respect," Alexander proposed, his voice rising. "Think of how many more lives you could touch and sales you could make by changing your perspective." Maggie felt pride as the dialogue continued, knowing it was about creating lasting change. As the conversation peaked, Alexander addressed the sales team, urging them to break free from bias and foster an inclusive environment. The room fell silent, filled with contemplation. Blake shifted uncomfortably, his bravado fading as employees exchanged thoughtful looks, some nodding in agreement. Maggie felt triumphant, recognizing this as the start of a larger conversation for inclusivity at Boston Luxury Motors. She texted Alexander, eager to hear about their plan's impact. Alexander sensed a shift among the staff, some moved, others grappling with their biases, feeling accomplished for planting a seed of awareness. After the meeting, Blake approached Alexander, his demeanor changed. "I didn't realize," he admitted, searching for words. Alexander encouraged him, noting that every interaction is a chance to learn. Meanwhile, Daniel, a young salesman, seemed uncomfortable. Blake noted he would discuss customer assessment with him later. Suddenly, at 10:17 a.m., the sound of a powerful engine caught everyone's attention. A custom Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop outside, stunning everyone, including Blake. "Is that?" Richard Mason, the owner, asked, drawn by the stillness. "Bespoke Phantom," Blake confirmed, heading to the entrance. A uniformed chauffeur opened the rear door, revealing a tall, impeccably dressed man exuding authority. Blake's instincts kicked in. This was a prime client whose purchases could lead to a lucrative relationship. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors," Blake greeted, intercepting the visitor. "I'm Blake Thompson, the sales manager. It's a pleasure to have you." The man, Alexander Collins, offered a polite but distant smile and a firm handshake. Blake recognized the name but couldn't place it. "What brings you here today? Perhaps I could show you our newest arrivals?" Alexander interrupted. "Actually, I'm here about the Azure Coupe, midnight blue." Blake's smile widened. "Excellent choice. One of only 15 produced this year. I'd be happy to show you." "I know where it is. My wife was here yesterday expressing interest in it." "Your wife?" Blake asked, confused. "Perhaps one of my colleagues assisted her?" "No, Mr. Thompson, you assisted her. Or rather, you refused to assist her. Margaret Collins. She was in jeans and a white t-shirt. You suggested she might be more comfortable looking at used cars." Blake's face went pale as realization hit. Daniel, nearby, gasped. "Mr. Collins, Blake stammered, losing his composure. "There must be some misunderstanding. We welcome all customers here." Richard Mason, the owner, approached, sensing tension. "Is everything all right, Blake?" "Mr. Mason, I presume?" Alexander asked. "Yes. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors." "Thank you. I was explaining to Mr. Thompson that my wife visited yesterday, interested in the Azure Coupe as a gift for her sister, but she was treated poorly." Richard's expression shifted to concern. I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't aware of all the details." "The details include your sales manager suggesting that people like her don't belong here based on her casual attire," Alexander stated. A crowd had gathered, and the showroom fell silent. "Mr. Collins," Blake began, desperation in his voice. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Daniel interjected, surprising himself. "Ms. Collins was treated poorly. She was polite and specific about her interest in the Azure, but was dismissed based on her appearance." Blake shot Daniel a scathing glance, but the damage was done. Alexander turned to Richard Mason. "My wife founded the Collins Foundation for Children with Disabilities and has raised over $50 million for medical equipment and educational programs. She dresses simply to stay connected to the families she supports. It's one reason I admire her." Richard went pale. "Mr. Collins, this does not reflect our dealership's values." "Action speaks louder than mission statements, Mr. Mason," Alexander replied. "I'm not just looking to buy one vehicle. I intended to purchase the Azure for my wife's sister, but I'm also considering replacing our entire fleet of 7 corporate vehicles and updating my personal collection." Mason's eyes widened at the potential sale. However, Alexander continued, "I'm questioning whether this is the right dealership for such an investment." The showroom fell silent and Blake looked ill. "Mr. Collins," Richard said desperately, "I cannot apologize enough. This is not how we conduct business. Please let us make this right." Alexander pondered. "There's a way forward, but it requires more than just selling cars." "Anything," Richard assured. "The Collins Foundation is hosting a benefit gala next month for a new adaptive sports complex. Blake," he said, turning to the mortified sales manager, "your presence would be educational." Blake swallowed hard. "Sir." "Not as a guest," Alexander clarified. "As a volunteer, the foundation needs help with setup and assisting the children. It was about more than selling cars. It was a lesson in human value. Additionally," he continued, addressing Richard Mason, The dealership should implement a training program on unconscious bias. I know excellent consultants. Richard nodded. Absolutely. We welcome that initiative. Turning to Daniel, Alexander said, I'd like you to handle all the paperwork for the Azure for my sister-in-law. Daniel's eyes widened. Me? Thank you, sir. I'd be honored. Good, Alexander replied. Now, let's discuss the corporate fleet. As they walked toward Mason's office, Alexander paused by the Azure, admiring its sleek lines. My wife has great taste, doesn't she? Behind them, Blake stood frozen, realizing he had revealed his true character not by how he treated the important, but by how he treated those he deemed unimportant. A month later, the Collins Foundation Gala transformed the Grand Boston Hotel into a celebration of hope. Blake, in an event staff uniform, directed guests and assisted a young boy in a wheelchair. His volunteer work, initially a duty for professional survival, had profoundly changed him as he witnessed the daily challenges these children faced with dignity. Maggie Collins approached Blake, elegant in a simple blue dress. How are you finding the experience, Blake? She asked. Humbling and necessary, he replied. Maggie nodded. Thomas seems to have taken a liking to you, she noted, referring to the boy in the wheelchair. He's teaching me about adaptive basketball. Apparently I have terrible form, Blake admitted, making Maggie laugh. Blake then turned serious. Mrs. Collins, I need to say it directly. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse. You're right, she agreed without malice. What have you learned? That worth isn't determined by appearance or possessions, and everyone deserves respect until proven otherwise, he said thoughtfully. Good lessons, Maggie acknowledged. Expensive ones, too. Blake nodded, reflecting on the business lost when Alexander decided to purchase only the Azure. Worth every penny, he replied sincerely. Alexander joined them, placing a hand on Maggie's shoulder. Blake was just sharing some insights, she explained. I hear you've become quite involved with the adaptive sports program, Alexander said. Yes, sir. I've signed up to continue volunteering and am working with Mr. Mason to revamp our customer approach. No more qualifying by appearance. I'm glad to hear that, Alexander said, surprising Blake. About that corporate fleet, I'd like you to handle that transaction. Daniel speaks highly of your mentorship. Blake shifted from shock to gratitude. I'd be honored, Mr. Collins. Later, as the event wrapped up, Blake observed Maggie and Alexander genuinely connecting with guests, reflecting on how his perception had changed. A month ago, he would have dismissed someone like Maggie based on her casual appearance, but now he saw that true value runs deeper than looks or titles. While helping Thomas back into his wheelchair, the boy said, You're pretty cool for a grown-up. Blake smiled, responding, That's the highest compliment I've received in a long time. Blake learned that true worth isn't found in appearance but in how we treat others. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and sharing your insights in the comments. Have you ever misjudged someone based on looks? Your stories could inspire others. Join us for our next tale, where another valuable lesson awaits. Until then, keep discovering the extraordinary in the everyday.